Carolyn Edlund, founder of Artsy Shark, is one of the leading art consultants to artists and craftspeople, offering marketing and sales tips on one of the top 10 art business blogs.
How are you?
It's nice to meet you. Thank you for meeting us.
Sure. Where are you all located? Are you in Mountain Time?
I'm Mountain Time. He's Pacific.
Okay.
Yeah. 3 times here.
Okay. All different zones here.
All different zones, all together at once. Well, it's very nice to meet you. I've been following. Almost all artists seem to land on your page.
Oh, do they? Okay. Good thing. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure how you all knew me, if you were maybe on my mailing list or you'd known some artists that I've worked with or and so forth. But anyway, thanks for getting in touch.
I think for me, you just started popping up, as the longer you're in the art world.
Yeah, well, I've been around, interestingly enough, I started my site in 2009. So, 11 years ago. And back in those days, it was not as hard to get attention because there were probably a billion less people on the internet. And so I was very much focused on this niche, and I was very diligent about publishing good content and just organically growing my list and putting a business into place that had elements to it that attracted artists, and it worked. Like all the parts work to pull people in. So that's how I got started, and it's probably why you know about me. I am just so ingrained into search that I don't even know where I am on the front page of Google, but a lot of different places. But anyway, so I'm glad you found me.
So your search engine optimization, where your people are using keywords, for searches, you don't.
I swear to you, I'm not an SEO person. I mean, I built a WordPress site. I'm not the webmaster. I have one, but I know how to run a WordPress site. But I never hired anybody who's an SEO expert. I use the Yoast plugin, which is just a plugin for WordPress. So I'm not an SEO expert. Is that what you were thinking, that I knew what I was doing? I mean, I'll tell you a couple reasons why. I mean, I use a lot of words naturally in writing. I mean, they're just coming up all the time. Business of art, art marketing, selling art, just because I'm so specifically down in my niche. And so it's all organic. It's just because I published over 2,000 articles on my site.
It comes across very clean. If you look at a website like mine or others, because we've got that hashtag kind of thing going on, it muddies it up.
What do you mean as a hashtag thing going on?
Well, so you said you use the words business, art, marketing in your articles. So
they're naturally occurring, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then on a website like mine, they're not naturally occurring.
So they're tags on images and things like that?
Right.
Yeah, well, but I imagine you have just an artist website. In fact, I think I looked at your artist website. You are an artist.
Yes, ma'am. Painter, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so your content, not having millions of words or however much content, you're looking at tagging and alt tags and meta tags and descriptions and things like that. Are you built on WordPress?
I'm on WordPress, yeah.
Okay.
And then I think Carson uses Squarespace.
Shopify. Yeah, link.
Oh yeah. Well, Shopify integrates with everything. I'm sure they've probably got automatic SEO.
Super
so I probably, if you want to talk to an SEO expert, I'm probably not an expert on that. I do a lot of other things that we can talk about, but I think I looked at. I think you have a fairly new podcast, correct?
Yeah, about a year and a half, 2 years.
Oh, okay. And it looks to me like you speak to a lot of artists.
A lot of artists. One of the first interviews that I did, just getting into it, was actually an SEO expert.
Oh, really? I should
Yeah,
listen to that.
I typed into YouTube SEO and contacted the first person that popped up,
Mm-hmm.
and then went and met him, and we did an interview on
Yeah.
SEO. But
Well, I'll tell you, I think, and we may be getting off on the wrong conversation here, but I think that what you are doing is actually really smart, and you're probably doing it intuitively. So, like, if you were to ask me, "Well, how did you even build this business?" I mean, I have certain principles in place. It's very simple, and it just runs just on, it's like rinse and repeat. But when I first got started, I just reached out to people mostly on LinkedIn, knowing that I knew a certain amount about the business of art, but I certainly didn't know, everything by any stretch. And so I started reaching out to people that I met on LinkedIn, and I reached out to this one woman who was a professor at, I don't know, she was at Pratt at one time. I don't know. She was at another one in New York, and then she switched. I think maybe FIT. But anyway, so I reached out to her and I said, wow, I'm looking for somebody to ask questions about how to get into galleries in New York. And you're such an expert. I'd love to talk to you. Well, you know what people say when you ask them? They say yes. Am I right?
yeah, I think, yeah, I found it too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everyone wants exposure. Everyone wants attention. Everyone wants, to be an authority, and you're asking them very nicely. And so I think the odds are 90% of the time you'll get a yes, unless somebody just doesn't get back to you or they're really busy. And so I think if you're looking to build something like a really great podcast, just get out there and just be yourself and ask authorities and experts, and you'll find that you can build a heck of a podcast, that has a lot of listeners and has a lot of authority by just going out and asking.
People have been very responsive, like yourself.
Yeah.
You thought about it. And so in 2009, you started Artsy Shark. Mm-hmm. And then I see behind you it looks like some pottery.
Well, I have a lot of pottery. I was a ceramic artist at one time. I just traded for like all this stuff. Back in the day, it shows, artists just kind of swap things, and I did buy some things, but yeah, I came out of the craft traditions. So I was a ceramic artist for 20 years. I had a production studio, sold in the wholesale marketplace.
Are you still selling and creating artwork?
No, I started my studio when I graduated college in 1980, and so I started in 1981, and I ran my business. It got really big. I exceeded all my goals, and I was hiring all these people, and we had hundreds of stores we were selling into, and things were great. But I completely burned out by 2001, and I'm like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I can't go to another retail show. I had done over 200 retail shows. I just didn't want to, and so I'm like, well, I'm going to look for a job. And I thought, well, who's going to hire me? Because I've been self-employed all my life. So who hires people like that? And I got a job like that because I happened to apply as an outside sales rep for an art publishing company, Portal Publications, which was the biggest in the country. And they're in the San Francisco area, or they're out of business now, but they were based out of Novato, near San Francisco, if you know that area.
No, I don't. But.
And okay, so I was a rep for them, for an outside rep for them for about 3 years. And we sold posters and prints and greeting card lines and stationery, paper. We sold paper. And I really learned that business, and a lot of what I learned from being a rep, I realized, boy, if I would have known this when I was an artist, I probably would have, made a lot more sales and not made so many mistakes. And I learned a lot of concepts and ways to sell and merchandising and product offerings and price point spreads and all kinds of things that were super valuable. And so I just started writing for artists to give them some ideas of how they could use strategies that big manufacturers use, except scaled for their own business. And so that's how I got into blogging.
And always Artsy Shark. Artsy Shark was the
Yes.
first blog.
Yes. My first and only. I'm still there after 10 years.
Well, you also run a nonprofit, Art Business Institute.
I do not run that any longer. I was the executive director there for 7 years. And we did over 60 live workshops all over the country and in the Caribbean, teaching artists the business of art. So we would do like a 2-day workshop, and it was a great position to. I got to travel a lot. I got to meet all kinds of people, and it was very successful. But I haven't been with them for 3 years, but I do collaborate and work with the Clark Hulings Fund for Visual Artists, which has a well-known business accelerator program. And in that capacity, I'm the sales and events director, and I'm also their sales strategy and subject matter expert. So I do a lot of teaching and speaking and articles and stuff like that.
Yeah, you have a lot of experience. You also collaborate on books.
Well, I've written 8 courses, but they're online courses. I haven't written a book. I don't think I want to write a book. That's a big undertaking.
Just open your website and hit print and then bind it.
There you go. Just bind it all. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Carson, what do you think? You had some questions that you...
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that's, interesting, and one thing that I'm glad that you're here for is constantly, I feel like me and Melchor have discussed like the duality with art and business. That's absolutely necessary for people to have success. And I feel like, as you mentioned, you were an artist, and, reflecting upon your experiences, things could have been better, or you could have made more sales, and who knows, what could have happened with that knowledge. So I feel like, that's one thing that's really cool about having you here is, that's one thing that me and Melchor like to spread, with other artists. I mean, that is constantly, like the biggest downfall, or, like not having the confidence to spread your work or to release it and share it. So I feel like this is all kind of like coming together, and you're the perfect candidate to like talk to this, talk to about this, especially since you have those courses on your website and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, I think you've really struck on something that is just so true for many artists is they either may feel ambivalent about actually being in business. Like they want to create, they want to make what they are inspired to make, which I think they should do. And they may feel that they're selling out if they're creating work that is for their audience, or, you're doing really well with this, so you make more of it. That makes sense. I mean, in the real world, in the marketplace, companies make things and they discontinue products that don't sell, and they make products that serve the needs and wants of their customers. And that makes a lot of sense. But as artists, when we're making art, I think a lot of people are conflicted. In a perfect world, what you make and what your customers want to buy is perfectly aligned. And so, if everything that you made, there was a demand for, then, that would be ideal. But that's not always the case. I think about an artist that I worked with at one time, and I really felt for him. He was inspired to make art that was about drug abuse and about homelessness. And these are very important, topics and very, very big subjects. And he was a painter, but he couldn't sell his work because his work was quite depressing. I mean, he had, people with needles coming out of their arms and dead people. And you don't typically see people, collectors buying that to put into their living room. And he was really having issues with people wanting to buy it. So we had to talk about, well, what is it that you really want to do? And where is it that you can get some traction in the market? Because the truth is that no matter what it is you make as an artist, people buy what they want. There's 2 parties to a transaction. When you have a collector who's buying, I mean, you may be able to educate them on your work, and you may be able to bring people around so that they start understanding what you do and they see the value of it. Sometimes you can have a gallery or advocates who help other people understand your work. But normally people buy what they feel emotionally connected to, what they fall in love with, what they want to surround themselves with, and what they want to put in their homes. I mean, just like all this stuff that I have is very meaningful to me. I know every single artist who made all of this work, and it's very meaningful to me. And so people are looking for that connection. If you are an artist who makes work and who can communicate visually, and I think in writing and verbally to people so that they can really start to understand them, you can cultivate people to a body of work. But there are artists who make work and they'll just say, this doesn't sell. What do I do? So there's a lot of conflict, I think, that people feel about making work to be sold, and am I selling out? I mean, hopefully people are beyond the money is dirty business with art. I think that's just a very kind of an, I hope people have gotten beyond that. Art
Well,
has
you want to continue
value. You should be paid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if you want to continue doing it, you have to get paid to, funnel into other projects.
That's right.
When I first started, I'm really into sort of the Baroque Caravaggio. So all of my paintings were dark. So,
Yes.
I was pretending to, be Caravaggio.
Chiaroscuro and all the whole bit.
And a gallerist was like, you can't do that. He says people want bright, like, colors. And I was like, whoa. Okay, so now I paint with like light blues and like pastel pinks.
Well, I mean, I totally get what you're saying. And there are absolutely trends that run through the market. And I saw that when I was working for the art publisher, that you'll see things really come in and they'll be around for a few years and then they slowly go out. And so we see these trends in art and what we really call wall decor in the industry. That's, being sold into stores and sold into frame shops and things like that. So, are you someone who is in alignment with that, or are you making art for another reason? I mean, I have a friend who's an artist and I love her work. Her name is Robin Holder. And for years she has been for years and years and years, she's been making work that is about her experience as a biracial American and what it was like growing up and what the meaning is in different cultures, and for the purpose of helping people understand other people, other cultures, so that when we know where they're coming from, we can have conversations and makes acceptance a little easier. Well, her work was not in vogue, but boy, it is now. So this year she's had, I think, 11 interviews with magazines and she's got a museum show coming up, because she's just kind of, happens to coincide with the huge awareness in the country going on about racial justice and all kinds of different issues. And so, but again, she's been doing this for 30 years. So you might find that what you're doing coincides with what's either popular or what's trending or what's in the market. You might make something because you want to enter a certain market. Is there anything wrong with that? I don't think there is. Depends on what you want. So it's just, there's a lot. I think there's a lot that artists have to deal with. But I think that ultimately you need to be true to what you really want to do, and that you're not making work just to sell. If you do, then you'll probably get burned out.
Yeah.
And from experience, like from where you were going to these 200 shows that you discussed, I mean, did you feel like that was one of the reasons you were burnt out personally, or was it something that you felt like you were creatively like in control and you weren't just like jumping through the hoops of what people wanted?
No, I absolutely designed for my market, but we were creating collections that were sold wholesale into stores, not art galleries, but stores, boutiques, all kinds of stores around the country. And they were buying outright, marking out to retail and being sold. And that was in the gift industry or the gift market. So I was in control of things. I actually got some of my best ideas from customers who, would make comments or be looking for things. But I think it was just the work and I hate to admit this because I was never this person. I had done many shows over a period of 20 years. I'd done many shows, and I remember driving up to a show. It was in central Pennsylvania, and it was an outdoor festival. It was in August, and I'd gotten up at like 5 a.m, and my van was loaded, and my booth was there, and all my stock. And I drove in, and I was exhausted, and I just said, I can't do this. I drove 2 hours, got all the way up there, and I can't do this. And I turned around and drove home, and I had never I was never a no-show. I was never the kind of person who, bailed out. And I realized then that I just didn't have I had no motivation to do it anymore. So, but we have seasons in our lives. You may find that, Melchor, you're certainly becoming a podcaster. I think that that's something that you're doing that you're probably falling in love with, or you must love, or you wouldn't do. And so I have not created art really for, I guess, almost 20 years. And I don't miss it. I sold everything that I made through the bare walls, when we closed, because I've moved on to something else. And at my age and in my position, I get a great deal of fulfillment just working with artists. When I see an artist, that we've been working closely together, and I see them succeed at something, or I see how much improvement they've made, or that their presentation is great, or they got an amazing sponsor, or some really great success. I feel an immense amount of fulfillment just in seeing someone else that I've mentored or work with have that success. That's the big deal, is to help that person, not to experience that myself, but to see what they've been able to achieve.
Yeah. And as for that artist that you're talking about, with like focusing on drug addiction and homelessness and stuff like that. I mean, unless, we have to pay to find out. But what kind of conclusion did you end up, in that situation where you had bold, like,
right. So he had this body of work, and we looked at it, and he said, "I don't think this is very, very saleable." And I said, "Well, I would agree with you. I think it probably isn't. When you look at what people want in their homes, what they usually want, art that makes them feel good."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, I have other paintings that I had worked on in the past, and they had kind of an Alice in Wonderland theme. They were kind of fantasy pieces." And I think his daughter was very inspirational to him, because not only was she a little girl, but she fallen in love with Alice in Wonderland, and he, and they would make up stories together. And this is very much it was very meaningful to him. And I said, I think you have something there that might be a direction to go, because if you are looking to enter a market, or perhaps find a market that is correct for you, you've got to realize, what do the customers want and what do they need? Because what you're selling to them, and I don't care whether you're selling them a pair of shoes or you're selling them art, you're selling them something that they feel they want and something that they need. And when people love your work and they're ready to buy art, what they're saying is, the money that I am handing over is less valuable to me than the art that I'm going to get from you in return. Mm-hmm. And so we know that has to be quite meaningful to people. And I urged him to work on that particular series and to develop that. And then he did end up making some sales. I haven't heard from him in a long time, but just was a good example to pull out.
Yeah.
He decided to go in a different direction to fulfill the goals that he had, which was perfectly fine.
Absolutely. And I feel like he would end up being that in the same boat as your friend, was in, for like 30 years painting and not really being recognized until it becomes something that is big and is in the limelight, essentially, of the time.
Well, she had done a lot of work. I mean, she's had a lot of shows. She's gotten recognition. She had won awards. But this year it's on steroids. This year, everyone wants to know about her. They want to invite her. They want to give her a museum show. And so then you get kind of in the opposite situation where you say, I'm overwhelmed with people who want something from me. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like you're the one who's being sold to. So what do you choose? And that's where she's in the enviable position to evaluate what's being offered to her and to selectively say yes to those things that are in alignment with her goals and objectives, and then to say no to things that are pulling her off task or distracting, or maybe are going in a direction she doesn't want to go into. I feel that artists need to say no quite frequently for those reasons. And I also think that artists need to spend their time, most of their time, doing their highest value work. What is it that only you can do? So that you're not constantly, running off to do something like wrap things in bubble wrap and ship them off, or spend your time on social media if you're being pulled out of the studio, or going and teaching a class that you don't really want to teach because someone else asked you to. You have to say, what do I want as an artist and as an entrepreneur? And I think that in this day and age, that artists are very fortunate, because more so than ever before, artists can be self-directed. They get to be the CEO of their own business, and they get to set the priorities and set the tone for what they want, rather than looking for a gallery or who wants me, or so.
Melchor, you have any input on that?
I think you were doing all of those craft shows, and then you kind of went into the commercial side of art, and then now you're working with people that are selling off of the internet.
Yes, among other things, but yes.
Do you see any difference between people that buy art in those different sort of venues, or?
Yes, I think the ideal way to sell art is in person. I think that people want to experience your art, speak to the artist, shake your hand, see the brush strokes, in the painting, or walk around the sculpture and experience it in person. Of course, this year has been very difficult for that. I also, selling art is about building relationships with people. Very few sales are made on the first time that someone sees you or sees your work. If you are on the internet, then quite often you're trying to pull people to your website, and maybe you feel that you have a finite amount of time to try to sell them something. You've got a shopping cart in place, and you're selling your art, or perhaps you're selling reproductions. And so I think there are a few differences. I think the sweet spot for buying art online is probably lower than the sweet spot for buying art in person. And part of that is just the trust factor that, yeah, I want to buy this. I'm okay with $500. So we see a couple $100 to maybe $2,000, $3,000 is kind of a range that's very sellable online. Will someone buy a $10,000 or $20,000 piece of art on the internet? Well, maybe with certain auction houses, if it's a known artist and you know about this piece and you want to own it, and it's coming up for auction, yes. So we might see sales like that. But I don't think that, those are definitely not impulse items. And I think generally they don't sell online like that. I think the online audience for art is younger. We see a lot of millennials. We see a lot of people who would never walk into a gallery ever. They want to be shopping in their pajamas at 3 a.m. They're used to being served up results for, I want a painting of, of Niagara Falls in winter. I want a photograph of Niagara Falls in winter. They can type that in, and they're going to find a whole selection of those and some amazing shots. And they can buy those from a photographer just like that. And they can, select the size they want and the substrate and everything else, and just get what they want. It's very simple, and they're very comfortable with that. And so I think that although all age groups do shop online and buy art online, that you can pull a younger demographic that won't walk an art show or a festival. They won't come to an art fair, but they'll shop online. I don't know whether you all have had that experience in selling work or in buying art yourself.
I don't buy art.
Good.
I don't think I've sold to. My demographic seems to be homeowners whose children are out of college.
Mm-hmm.
I think Carson sold online, but you had actually met the person at a party.
Yeah, it was kind of like a hybrid moment. But I absolutely agree with like the personal experience, especially when
that word that you're using, hybrid, that is the word. That's like the word of the year. And in fact, had somebody ask me today about, well, why would you even want to sell online when most people want to, buy in person? Well, this year's not a good year for selling in person because everything was canceled. Yeah. But I honestly believe that the value in an artist having their own website, and I really like them to have their own website, not just being on a third-party platform like Saatchi or a gallery website, but having their own proprietary website. The value is that it is an ancillary channel to selling in person. So I might meet you at a gallery opening, at a fair, at a show, an exhibition, or just at a dinner party. And we start to talk, and you're interested in my art, and maybe you're even looking at some of it, but you can't make a decision because that's a big purchase, or maybe your spouse needs to help you make that decision, or you want to measure your space and you're just not ready, but you're quite interested. So I'm going to say, well, Melchor, let me keep in touch with you. Let me get your email address. I'll put you on my list, and maybe I'll even take a picture over here of this painting that you're interested in. I'll email it to you. Or send me a picture of the space in your house you were thinking of, and I'll Photoshop it in there at scale. We'll see how that might look for you. So we know that that sale's not being made, at the point of us meeting personally, but it's being made online later. I'm going to send you an email. I may send you to a link on my website, and you can make that purchase online after having had both experiences, just like Carson was talking about, because now you have the confidence level to make that purchase. So I believe that even the artists should continue to sell in person as often as possible, but they should use their online presence as, an ancillary channel, just another way to make that hybrid sale and to stay in touch with people through things like email marketing, social media, bringing them back over and over again to their site. And that person's going to fall in love with what you have. They're already interested in it. And when the time is right and they have the money, or maybe they need to buy a gift and what you make is just perfect, that's when you're going to close the sale.
My preferred method of selling is an exhibition. Everybody's kind of floating around and you're talking, and then they take the painting with them. But there's sort of like a desperation to it as well. Like you've got to close that sale right then. And so being able to relax and refer people to the website, and maybe they can make a decision later.
Well, I would approach it a little differently, but I understand exactly what you're saying. When you say, well, there's a level of desperation, we've all felt it. Anybody who's been at a show or in a position where you're trying to sell, you're hoping that that person will buy, and you might be giving them great reasons to buy. And maybe they're not ready to make that jump. They're not ready to commit. But I don't believe it's a question of will that person come back later and go to your website, or will they contact you? But what are you as the artist doing to gather that information and to set the stage for the next step in the sales process, which is your follow-up? So let's say you are at that exhibition and they are in love with something, but just doesn't close. You know what? You're going to get their information. Like I said, just give me your email, or, I'll give you my card, but let me have yours as well. If you're thinking about it, if this doesn't sell here, I can let you know about it. I can stay in touch with you. I can let you know what's new. Sure. Okay, fine. You're putting them on your email list. You might even contact them the following week. I didn't sell that one painting at the exhibition where you were, but I'm local to you. And I know you're in love with it. And I just feel that this is the right piece of art for you. And I've been thinking about you this week. I'm local, and I'd be happy to drop over, bring that piece of art, and let's put it in your home and see if it is a fit for that space. You'd be amazed how many people are very flattered that an artist is actually going to make a home visit. And so what are you going to do? Are you going to put that painting in your car? You bet you are. You're going to throw a couple of extra pieces in the trunk as well. So that when you go over, when you're invited into their home, and that's a very intimate setting, that's a very personal meeting, and you're walking around their home and you've brought the artwork in, and maybe they've looked at it and they're like, yeah, this works. Or, that's a little bit too big. It really wasn't right. You might say, I've got some other pieces. Let's try them out. Or you might even make multiple sales because they start finding out that other pieces of your work fit in other places in their home. And I've heard from artists who've done this. So, and gallery owners, this is the kind of thing that they would do. So if you think of as yourself as the CEO of your own business, a self-directed artist who owns the business, who is the salesperson, then you should act like the gallery owner. You're going to be showing your work, in a beautiful space, just like at the exhibition you talked about. And then you're going to take that next steps in the sales process, where you're going to get in touch with people. When we know that if your work is in a gallery show, does the gallery make sales to people who walk in the door? Not really. They get on the phone and they call their collectors. That's who buys the art. It's their network and their relationships and their past customers.
This is very nice advice. It's more than I expected.
Yeah. That's what sales is about. But it isn't twisting people's arms or haranguing people or chasing them down the street. I think it's just being yourself and just relating to them as a person. I think many collectors, or even people who don't think of themselves as collectors yet, but maybe they're just interested in art, are fascinated by artists.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, Carson, I know this guy. His name is Carson. He's an artist. So interesting. I want to learn about him. I was actually talking to him the other day. We had this phone call. They're thrilled. Don't tell them that your car is 10 years old or that you sold nothing at your last show. Just be that artist that they're expecting to talk to, and tell them about your creativity and what inspires you and how you work and, what you love, and they will treasure that relationship with you.
Yeah, the genuinity is definitely a big part of it.
Yeah, it's true. It really is true.
And when we discuss this hybrid kind of marketplace, I see a lot of it with social media and artists too. Is so many people have videos of them making the piece, so you still have somewhat of an interaction with them. But then it comes down to you actually buying it and pulling the trigger and doing it, especially in the times that we live in with COVID. That type of content goes a very long way.
You are so right. How many times have you heard an artist say, I showed a work in progress on my Instagram feed and somebody told me they wanted to buy it before it was even finished? You've heard that, haven't you?
I haven't heard of someone personally, but I imagine that happens.
I've certainly talked to a lot of artists, or you'll see a video, like a time lapse of them painting or throwing a pot, and it can go viral. People are fascinated with the process. So sharing your process is absolutely, work in process photos are great. Wild, when it's a really striking, huge piece of art and you just see somebody do it. It's kind of amazing.
Just art is, from a sales perspective, is one of the most dynamic products there are, and finding that X factor. Considering that you're in one way or another, a consultant for artists, it's amazing that you can assess people's situations so well, because when it is something like art, when it has such a dynamic, it's very interesting that you have that.
But here's the reality of it. Everyone has the same problems, They don't know how to market their art. Their portfolio is all over the place, or they haven't got a clue how to price, or they don't know who their audience is, or they don't feel comfortable writing marketing materials, or they don't understand the different sales channels in the markets and how do they work and which one's correct for them. And so, or they know what they want and they're very clear on it, but they don't know how to get from here to there. And the truth is that there are systems and ways to structure a business that get you from here to where you want to go. And there's just certain ways to just put it together. Sometimes there are many steps to it. You have to stick with it. But really, people do have the same questions quite frequently. Or I'll look at what somebody's doing and I'll say, look what you're doing. You see this and this? This is a good idea. Like I said to Melchor, look what you're doing with podcasts. Look how you're inviting people who you feel are experts that your audience is going to be interested in. Bravo, because that's the number one thing you ought to be doing right there. Or I can look at what somebody's saying and I'll be like, look what you've done over there. That's not a good idea because of this. Or you can't price your work for the wholesale market because there's no margin in there. So you just kind of look at whole situations like that and kind of analyze it. But anyway, yeah.
Well, I know that Carson and I thought that this was really great that you were interviewing with us. It was nice of you to do.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I love to talk to artists. I am always curious about what people are into and what they want to know about and what they like to talk about. So I'm thrilled to talk to y'all. I do a lot of interviews. I do a lot of podcasts, but it's it's just good to connect with people who are really doing it. I truly believe that you can talk to me, people know me. I'm no longer an artist. I'm no longer working in the studio. But I think that the real examples out there and the people who are most inspiring to artists are the ones who are actually doing it. You're living it, you're on the front lines, you're going through the trials and tribulations, you're having the success or the frustration. And I think that that's very real. And I think that that kind of a conversation with working artists is what's the most valuable to them. Their own community who is filled with serious artists like themselves.
It's nice to be able to bounce things off of people, and
That's right.
nice to see people.
Brings everybody together.
Well, thank you for meeting with us.
Absolutely. Guys, listen, it's my pleasure. Please let me know when this comes out, and I'll be happy to share with my audience.
Oh, thank you.
I want to wish you both the best. Stay well, make lots of art, and have a good year.
Excellent. It was a pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Thank you both.
Thank
Take
you.
care.